Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and forget the chocolates, rip up the roses. No way these two parties are ever going to work this one out. Miles apart on spending. I think John Boehner just said he's spent. He's out of here, and Cupid can stick an arrow up his you-know-what. He didn't say that, but it's kind of where things stand. Says he's had it with the president who won't budge on spending and the Senate that won't budge on even coming up with a budget. Now, before you think that is the end of the world and these awful automatic spending cuts, more than 1.3 trillion of them over 10 years, hit us hard in 2 weeks, I'm here to tell you, relax. Sometimes recognizing a bad relationship for what it is a good thing. And Republicans risking big spending cuts over still more tax hikes, well, that could be a good thing. So I say, have at it and just bring on this sequestration thing. We could do worse. My gosh, come to think of it, I think we already are. To Ford O'Connell and Katie Pavlich on whether Washington's loved disconnection could, in fact, be good. Katie, what do you think?
I think it is a good thing. You know, John Boehner is playing a little bit of hard to get on this Valentine's Day, and he's taking a step back and saying, look, the Democrats in the Senate can negotiate with President Obama on everything from now on, and then they can kick it over to the House. We'll take a look at it, but I'm done being the guy who gets blamed for everything when the Democrats are in the majority. So I think that's a very good approach for him for two reasons. The first is that it gives Democrats the responsibility for not having a budget and doing other things, but it also gives the Republican Party unity, which is something we haven't seen in the past couple years.
Well, something for it has changed, right? I mean, you know, it was back around Christmas time when they wanted to postpone these sequestration cuts. That was a nightmare scenario for Republicans as well as Democrats. Republicans more so because of all the defense cuts included. But now they seem to be saying, well, we'd rather that hell than the hell of higher taxes to offset them. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that if John Boehner's playing hard to get, Barack Obama's playing hard to want, and I agree with Katie. I think that the best thing for the Republicans to do is to sit back and wait for the president to negotiate with the Senate. But at the end of the day, this sequester is not a bad thing. I think it's actually a good thing because we're really talking about taking $85 billion out of $3.2 trillion in the federal spending this year. That's nothing. And then saying to the federal government, guess what? You just got to cut 2 to 3 pennies out of every dollar you spend for the next 10 years. If anything, it's going to make the government more efficient. And the fact that the president doesn't want to negotiate with John Boehner may actually bring some fiscal sanity to this country.
No, I think you make a lot of sense. And we should explain the 85 to 100 billion you're talking about is really just the upfront costs. This is, you know, when you hear the 1.3 trillion, it's over 10 years. And like you say, guys, over the scheme of this 10 years, we're still going to have a much higher overall debt, no matter what they do in the meantime. So I look at these so-called cuts and realize one thing, as you've reminded me, Katie, they're really cuts off the growth of all of these programs, including defense, including a lot of these entitlements, right?
Well, yeah, and the fact is that higher taxes, so say the Republicans decided to give the Democrats a tax hike to offset sequestration. Higher taxes are not sustainable. We cannot continue to raise taxes and expect these things to get paid for. The fact is that President Obama, in his State of the Union, made it very clear that the entitlement programs are not going to be reformed in the next 4 years. So sequestration is where we're going to have to see the pain, first of all, and maybe that'll get Harry Reid off of his feet to pass a budget.
I don't know about that. I'll tell you why, guys. Here's the words. I think Democrats are looking at an entirely different universe. And I first got a sense of it a couple of nights ago in the President's State of the Union address, when rather than address the debt, he more or less said, I'm one and done with the debt. This $4 trillion package I'm close to over the next 10 years, which he's not close to, and the math doesn't add up, is it. That's it. Furthermore, compounding this with still hundreds of billions of dollars worth and more spending that Ford, he says, will not add a dime to the deficit, which begs the issue. What kind of math is he using? And is he saying that because he's going to pay for it with still more tax hikes? What do you think?
Well, I think the math he's using would make Enron accountants proud. It's unbelievable. Anything he does is going to add on to the debt. Just servicing the debt itself alone is $227 billion a year. He's fooling himself, and the problem is,
Ford, why would he go ahead and propose, and we've trying to crunch the numbers here,
because he wants to raise taxes.
And it's hundreds of billions of dollars worth of new spending. And he obviously, he's not a dumb politician here. He's shrewd enough to think, and Harry Reid and others have figured, if we don't talk about the spending problem, we don't have a spending problem, right?
Well, that's exactly right. He really thinks that basically we can raise taxes to cover what we're missing with the deficit. And that's not true. I mean, this year alone, we're going to run an $800 billion deficit. And if we took everyone in this country who made $1 million and tax them at 100%, we're not even going to reach that $800 billion. So basically, all the president wants to do is to continue spending, and he's going to raise taxes to make that happen because he thinks the care and the nurture of the public sector is the way forward for prosperity. And what he's really doing is ignoring the private sector, and as a result, the growth this year is going to be 1.4%.
You know what I read into, though, and Katie, maybe you could help me with this. John Boehner more or less saying, I've had, I'm done, I'm going to let these cuts come. He's not saying it in so many words, but hell or high water, I'm done negotiating with this guy. I'm done being, smacked on the rear, to paraphrase what he was telling some reporters.
Right.
He's tired of it. He's not going to play the game, and if it means that he's going to take some heat for sequestration cuts or cuts, period, he's willing to take the heat. My own reaction to that is I wish you were of that mindset about 8 weeks ago, but coming as it does now, I argue better late than never.
Right. It's good that he has finally realized this, but the fact is that Republicans have passed budget after budget, plan after plan to reform entitlements, and they're not getting the credit for the plans that they have passed, while the Democrats somehow have pinned the blame of all of our economic problems on the Republicans. So John Boehner is taking a step back and saying, look, we're not getting credit for the work we're doing. Why would we continue to put all this hard work into these hard economic plans that we're presenting? It's time for the Democrats and the White House to present to us what they want, and the minority will then take a look at it when they're done doing all the heavy lifting.
You know what will worry me more, Ford, and maybe you could clarify this? I think if they do something that pushes these sequestration cuts down the road again, however they cobble together a deal to do that, I think the market fallout and the impact on our credit rating would actually be worse.
I actually agree with you because I think what the president will try to do is to raise taxes and not actually address the deficit problem. And as such, you're going to create so much uncertainty and you're going to bring down the value of the dollar. I totally agree with you.
That scares you, doesn't it, Ford? Admit it. That totally scares you.
It scares the bejesus out of me, Neil.
All right. Guys, I want to thank you both very, very much. And again, all of this hits the fan 2 weeks from tomorrow.